If you're looking for a movie with a bunch of big swinging dicks, boy do I have the movie for you.
Good grief, he's naked!
28 years later does not follow Aaron Taylor Johnson, but instead follows his kid as he ventures out of his isolated community to come face to face with the infected 28 years into the outbreak. Not gonna be any spoilers here, just gonna kind of hint at some of the stuff that happens, but I won't go into detail. 28 Days Later is one of my favorite movies. It resurrected a dead genre and brought zombies into the modern era. In a lot of ways, it set the mold for 2000s era horror with its chaotic editing, grungy cinematography, and yes, dicks in your face. What's going on with these movies, man? 28 Weeks Later, while not revolutionary like its predecessor, was a solid entry with legit twists and turns. I think it also, without exaggeration, has one of the strongest and most effective opening scenes to any movie ever. If there's one thing this series knows how to do, it's a great, desperate chase scene, and my god, you could just feel these things on your heels the entire time. Fuck your family, man, get out of there! Frantic, scary, desperate, and god damn that music! These movies set a tone that went on to define a genre for decades. So, the long-anticipated 28 Years Later was announced and dropped one of the coldest trailers I've seen in recent memory. Boots, 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 moving up and down again. After all that's been going on in the world, post-COVID, and in a tumultuous time for a lot of people across the globe, it seems like the perfect time for the original creators of the Rage virus to make a comeback. I loved the tone of this trailer, using that poem talking about the monotony of being a soldier, having to deal with the routine of a life only focused on getting to the next day. There's a world where this could have thematically connected to the soldiers in the first movie, all going nuts in their isolation and reverting back to their hyper-masculine urges and tendencies. That's what this poem and this teaser evoked, and that is not what this movie is at all. I'll start with the positives. Performances are great all around. This movie really ends up depending on this kid actor who does a phenomenal job. Also, this movie is legit tense in the first act or so. That's when we're following this father and son going on a ranging mission to get the kid some experience, teach him about survival. I don't know if you noticed, but dads really don't have a great track record in this franchise, so every scene early on, I was like, all right, is this the part where we see Aaron Taylor Johnson get ripped apart in front of his kid? I'm waiting for it. That's something this movie does really well. There's always this looming threat of death, and you never feel like these characters are safe. And like the other two, there are some really phenomenal chase scenes in this, especially revolving around this infected alpha. That first chunk of the movie is where you're learning a bit more about the world, how this community came to be, the state of the rest of the world, and that's all really interesting stuff. And that's where the movie is the most interesting, where it's getting into the new dynamics of the infected, talking about the alpha, seeing how the infected now hunt in packs. I saw on one of the posters of this movie that said something about the infection is evolving. And of course my first response to that was, no, that sucks, don't do that. But these were the guys that invented the Rage virus, you know? If there's anyone that could bring the infection to a natural next step, it would be these guys. And as the movie went on, I had my own thoughts about where this could go, revolving around the mother character who was sick. I was thinking that maybe that would tie into this new era of the infected. But no. Doesn't. It seems like they're going out of their way to ignore 28 Weeks Later altogether, which I think kind of sucks. The infected work completely different here. The teaser at the end of that movie is not addressed at all. That kind of sucks. But anyway, it was nice to see a movie be legit scary for the first time in a while. It's during this chunk of the movie where I could see how it shares some of the DNA with the rest of the franchise. It's different, but I could see how it fits in. Then we return to their town and their civilization, and there's some really interesting family drama there. I love that too. And then the movie falls off a cliff. Hard. Throughout, there are some weird editing choices, and I can see what they're going for. The first movie had some jarring cuts, cutting to societal chaos and riots to reflect the Rage virus. It was thematic and trying to say something. In this movie, they kind of try to do something similar, but it doesn't feel like it has that thematic thread. It's more like, here's some footage of medieval guys shooting bows and arrows to reflect our characters shooting bows and arrows. Yeah, cutting randomly to Monty Python and the Holy Grail during my tense horror set piece doesn't exactly do it for me. It's like if you were shooting a dinner scene and then part ways through it just cuts to a Burger King commercial because, look, they're eating, right? It's the same thing. It's distracting, and you could feel everybody in the theater kind of looking around at each other being like, what was that? Maybe if they did it more subliminally or with more thematically resonant footage that they cut to, it would have worked. I could see what they're going for, but it really just came across as laughable. My biggest problem, though, is that this movie really becomes a mess in the second half in a lot of ways. It goes from a pretty grounded story and tone, like the first two movies, to this overly sentimental movie with a completely different set of ideas and themes that come out of nowhere. Complete with our main character getting beautiful closure right as the sun sets, and It doesn't fit this world and feels really out of place. As it goes on, storylines get introduced and dropped left and right. Some really interesting ideas and world elements are brought up, but then they're completely forgotten about. Characters get introduced, dump their entire backstory on us just to leave the story immediately, and it leaves me with this feeling of like, why did we waste our time with that? Then there are other characters that we don't get enough information on, like Ralph Fiennes' doctor character. He lives outside of the community and is shown to do this weird ritualistic stuff with the corpses. Why? Fucking beats me! But his character just seems like one of those ideas that they threw in there to be like, oh, wouldn't this be interesting? Anyway, let's move on. And the way he leaves the story is so abrupt and weird that it really just calls attention to itself. Alright, kid, that was fun. Anyway, it's getting pretty late. Like, what? I also really wasn't digging this whole environment that he built for himself. This big pile of skulls, and you look around and there's these big pillars of bones. I don't know, to me it just kind of felt like a movie set and seemed really ridiculous in this world. The way they build up this alpha infected and what might be motivating him is something that is only really hinted at and is never concluded or followed up on. And that's just one of the many, many elements that gets completely dropped or is just never addressed in the third act of this movie. Small thing, but one character says the word zombie in this movie and it really bugged me. Like, just don't do that. Like, that's a rule. Don't break the rule. Yeah, it's so weird. It becomes funny for a second, then like unintentionally funny, and then, God, campy. Campy is not a word that should exist in the world of 28 Days Later. There are just elements of this story that become fully ridiculous and unbelievable, and it really does some damage to this movie as a whole. I can honestly say I've never seen a character fire a blow dart in a way that was meant to be touching and sweet. And it all culminates in, yeah, one of the worst endings to a movie I've seen in a long time. Full stop. And that story kind of concludes in a way that makes the whole journey seem pointless. Almost like the character would have been better off if he just never left home. Without context, all I could say is Eurovision flips out from behind some rocks to save the day. What the fuck? In the end, I'm left with more questions than answers, but not in a way where I'm interested, more like in a way where I'm left with my full frontal, uncensored dick in my hands. I know they're planning on making more of these, and people are going to use that as some excuse. Well, you know, it's a part one in this new modern trilogy, but it feels like they're putting the cart before the horse here, and it's that classic, hey, let's make this a cinematic universe, where maybe you should just kind of focus on making one good movie first. I don't know, as far as where I'm at, I am not interested in seeing any more of this if this franchise is going to continue on the tone that was set by the last like 30 seconds of this movie. And I think a big part of that is just it doesn't feel like a story. It doesn't feel like it's following any consistent characters or ideas or themes. It's just kind of this spread shot of different concepts that don't ever get paid off and don't ever get followed up on. Seeing Sony's logo at the beginning of this movie actually made my stomach drop, and, you know, not to be cynical, but it feels like they're just busting out one of their old franchises to milk so they don't have to rely on these Spider-Man-less Spider-Man spin-offs anymore. If the future of this franchise is in the same vein as the last, like, 30 seconds of this movie, I would not be interested at all. Which is a shame. I love zombie movies, and I really think if you sift through the nonsense of this movie, there's about an hour of a really great, really tense, and personal zombie story here that could have forwarded this world in an interesting way. 28 years later was my most anticipated movie this year, and it really disappointed me.